Welcome to the Generosity Experience, the podcast from Neon One, where we explore how our community show generosity, not just through money, but through relationships, time, and advocacy. I'm Tim Sarantonio.
And I'm Sam Nyland. Together, we help nonprofit professionals connect more deeply with their communities, move supporters to meaningful action, and simplify how generosity gets done.
Each conversation brings forward the voices and insights that are shaping the future of generosity, from strategy to systems, and everything in between.
So pull up a chair. There's always room for one more in this conversation. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Generosity Experience podcast. I am here with Laura Block, our Director of Product, and we are hosting a session called Product with Purpose, where product meets purpose and generosity powers the roadmap. So we are interviewing Laura today because she is going to touch on some product highlights for the month of June. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for joining. So out of all of the updates in June or this month, what's one feature that you're most excited about?
Ooh, picking one is always a challenge because we do have a bunch of cool things this time around. But I think small but powerful feature, we know how important it is to organizations that all of your online tools and pages are really branded and unified with your entire brand experience for your organization. So we have a cool update this month. It's coming out on the 28th of June, where for anyone who's using the membership tool in Neon CRM and using membership directories specifically, you will be able to pull an embed code of your entire directory so you can place it inside one of your web pages for just perfect unification with your website branding. And extra bonus for those of you who are also using Neon websites, so you're also using Neon One for your website as well, there'll be a quick tool to add a widget that gives the same experience of a fully embedded directory. So same directory, look and feel, but all of your branding with just embedding onto your site.
That sounds pretty fantastic. So out of this month's enhancements, do you have any other enhancements that you can talk about that perhaps give transparency to nonprofits so they can better recognize other forms of generosity outside financial forms?
Oh, you're speaking my language, Sam. A generosity data question. I love it. Yes. So lots of big updates for volunteer management, also in Neon CRM, also releasing on June 28th. We're going to have a completely new dashboard for volunteer managers to view their program as a whole. But I think to answer your question specifically about really transparency and looking at the entirety of a person's generosity, we're adding a couple of new reports, but the one-click report I wanted to call out is called the Volunteer Engagement Summary. And quick TLDR for this, it's going to be all of your active volunteers in your system. So each volunteer is one row in the report. And you'll be able to see not only their annual and recent and upcoming volunteer activity, but also their giving, their soft credits, their recent email engagement, their generosity indicator scoring, if they're also a peer-to-peer fundraiser, all of the other characteristics about them and how they're involved with your organization, plus all of their contact information and their custom fields and any other info you're storing about them. So, as you might guess, this is really inspired by the findings of the generosity report, especially just looking at the overlap between volunteers and event attendants or volunteers and making pledges. So seeing all of the multiple ways volunteers are involved, we wanted to give a one-click, a super easy report that shows all of that in one place.
That's amazing. So just to reiterate, what you're saying is that you can see all of this information in one screen, one screenshot?
Well, there's a lot of columns.
There's a little bit of scrolling, yes, but in one place.
Yes, and you can adjust the columns so that you can see what's most important to you in one screen without scrolling.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. Well, last question we have here. As I want to talk a little bit to our listeners about these enhancements because they do not just appear out of thin air. There's a lot of thought and intentionality that our team puts behind this. So, what's something people might not realize about how you and the greater product teams decide what to build next? And can you talk a little bit about the role that our clients play in that process?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. What people might not realize, let's see. So, my title is Director of Product, and I'm really managing our team of product owners who are focused on once we know what we're going to build, building the best possible version and the most useful version of that for you. But we have a whole other team, and shout out to that team, our product management team. That's the team that's really focused on deciding what we should build next. And you may or may not have run into them up till now because we do have a big group of customers, but they're constantly meeting one-on-one with people who are using Neon One products to see how they're using it, how they could use it better, how else we could help organizations use the tools that they need to use with us, and they're constantly prioritizing and reprioritizing and changing with the times and any new feedback that's coming in. So I guess to summarize, people may not know we have an entire team dedicated to this. And every time you submit feedback to our suggestions portal, we read every single comment, and that team is prioritizing what we should do next.
Awesome. Yeah, big shout out to you and your greater team. So that is a wrap on Product with Purpose, featuring Laura Block, our Director of Product. And we look forward to tuning in next month to hear about July's updates. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Sam.
Great. So, welcome to the segment Voices of Generosity, where we dive into the stories of Neon One clients and explore how generosity shapes their work and their communities. And today we have our first guest, which his name is Eric Guzman with Together for Youth. And Eric, I would love if you could introduce yourself, give us a quick snapshot of your organization, Together for Youth. So tell us who you are, what you do, and what your mission is all about.
Sure. Thanks, Sam. I'm excited to be here. I love talking about the sector. I love talking about the work that I'm doing. So my name is Eric. I am currently the Director of Development at Together for Youth. We are a child welfare agency that serves families in crisis all across New York State. We're in just about every county of New York State, operating a bunch of different programs. And I like to think of them as different sort of levels of care, I guess, from low levels of care to high levels of care. Our organization operates family preservation services, so working with families that are in crisis, need connection to community-based resources. We operate foster care programs, so when children do need to be removed from their homes, they can be put in the loving homes of foster families with the goal of reunification. And then a little level, higher levels of care, group homes, and detention services as well for youth who need to be in those types of settings. So I've been in my role for a year, but I've been in the nonprofit sector for close to 15 years. This is really the only work I've ever done. I spent many years in homeless services and in housing services. That's sort of where I got my feet wet in fundraising. Spent a couple of years in higher education, and have been in this role at Together for Youth for a year. So I'm originally from Long Island, so shout out to my Long Island people, but came up to upstate New York for school, went to Siena College, and that is really where I got springboarded now into the nonprofit sector, and currently residing still in upstate New York.
That's awesome. I think we have somewhat of a connection there. I used to work for a social service agency for about a little over 5 years. Back when I lived in Chicago. I'm currently in Colorado. But I worked with at-risk and formerly homeless youth in an education program. We also had family housing development as well. So yeah, we're doing the good work.
Doing the good work. Yes, we are.
Yeah. So today on this kind of episode, we've been talking about kind of the magic of generosity and the fact that generosity is really so much more than just financial contributions and donations. And I realized and noticed that you guys rebranded your name, which of course is now Together for Youth. Um, can you share a little bit about how this new identity reflects the kind of impact you're aiming for in your community?
Yeah, of course. And admittedly, Sam, I can't take any credit for the process because I arrived to the organization just as the rebrand process was finished. But the former name of the organization was Berkshire Farm Center and Services for Youth. So the history of the organization goes back about 140 years, actually, to 1886, when a couple who owned a farm in upstate New York didn't want to raise cattle or use it as a farm, but instead opened up a safe haven for troubled boys from New York City area who could come up to this farm and work and have an opportunity at a second chance instead of continuing to go down a potentially troubled route. And so this farm, the boys could learn to take care of animals. They could learn automobile mechanical types of things. There was a print shop. There was a maple syrup, production facility. So these boys were coming up and working on this farm, and hopefully leaving with mentorship, with skills, to hopefully go on a different path. So over the years, as the best practice of child welfare sort of evolved, the agency sort of adopted a philosophy of, instead of removing children from their families and from their homes, let's bring the services directly to them. And let's meet families where they are, in their homes, in their schools, in their communities. And so that's what Berkshire Farm Center at that time started doing, is let's establish social workers in the schools. Let's dispatch family specialists to go to homes when there are families who are in crisis. And so in 2024, the organization decided to rebrand, to really reaffirm and double down on that mission and those values, to rename the organization as Together for You. And so I think the name underscores the power of collaboration and that mentality that it takes a village to wrap around children and families who are struggling and need support. And so, I'm proud. I was a Berkshire Farm Center employee for 2 days, and then my email changed over to Together for Youth. But I am proud to work for this organization who really does see the potential in all of the youth and families we serve, regardless of where they are in life's journey and then what situation they're in. That we're going to show up, we're going to be there, and together it takes governments, it takes the nonprofit organizations, it takes schools, it takes doctors' offices. It really takes a village to make sure that all of the youth and families have the opportunities that they deserve.
Yeah, that's quite an impactful name. Um, and you really nailed that right on the head. It's like, I mean, Together for Youth really encompasses like your, not just community that you're serving, but the greater community at large within New York State, but then greater community beyond that. So that really is a testament to that new name change. Um, can you tell me about any projects or fundraising initiatives or programs that you're currently working on that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think so. I just celebrated my 1 year with the organization in May. So it's, you take that first year to sort of get your bearings and learn a little bit about an organization. And I'll tell you, I have been a sponge. I have been a sponge in just learning about all of the different programs that we offer, all the different ways that we're showing up for the youth and families that we serve. So now I feel like, as I'm rounding the base into year two, okay, now I can sink my teeth in and jump into some projects and really work on, what the impact can be through the work that I can control, is on the fundraising and philanthropy side of things. So something that we're working on this summer that I'm really proud of, and I can't take the credit for developing this campaign. It was sort of in the works, but I'm really trying to move the needle and make a bigger impact here, is a program that we run in the summer called Summer to Remember. And so it focuses on our families within our prevention program. So these are families who, the children have not yet been removed from the home, but they are at-risk families. And so for many reasons, social services, is working with these families, and at the risk of removing these children from the home. Um, And so during the summertime, when the children aren't in school, now they're disconnected from socialization, they're disconnected from meals, they're disconnected from structure, and likely more apt to have even more risks of getting into trouble and potentially being removed. So the Summer to Remember program is all about raising funds to support children's activities over the summer, and making sure that families have the support that they need to send children to summer camp, to enroll in workshops, to do a soccer camp over the summer. um, a lot of these families too, they're struggling to balance, working and providing for their families, but now also having to provide structure and plan activities, and make sure that their children are staying out of trouble. And so this Summer to Remember program, it really makes sure that children have the ability to have the best summer ever, just like any children should have the opportunity to have by doing all those fun things, but in a safe, structured way. And, towards the end of the summer as well, we're seeing that a lot of our supporters are also, they want some of these funds to also help with things like emergency meals, back to school supplies, and clothing and things like that. So really, this whole campaign has evolved of just, how can we send kids to, a baseball game for one night, to how can we structure and have programming for the entire summer and then send them back to school with school supplies, with new school outfits, and all these things. So we're really wrapping around fully these families, meeting them again where they are, and just hopefully letting kids be kids. So it's been a really fun campaign. We've had a great response from corporate sponsors, and from individuals. Something that we had a lot of fun with this year is we polled some of the children from different counties across New York State to say what fun wish list summer activities would you love to do, and actually included some of that in our appeal. So as people were receiving the appeal, they could say, all right, kids in Buffalo want to go to a Buffalo Bills training camp one day, and kids in Syracuse want to go to the New York State Fair. And so it was really fun to sort of personalize and localize, um, some of the things that kids wanted to do.
That's really awesome. And that's, I mean, when we're talking, of course, about, the magic of generosity within kind of the nonprofit space, but it's also all I could think about when you're telling me about this Summer to Remember is like those little moments that spark joy in a child's life,
Yeah,
whether that is, hey, I'm going to a Buffalo Bills game, or I'm going to a picnic in the park. And then, hey, I get a new backpack. Like, how fun is it to get your school supplies all ready and ready for school? So that's really amazing.
it feels really good. Um, and the number of youth across the state that we're serving, I mean, it's over 4,000 youth that are in our prevention programs per year. And so the impact that we're making, it feels really good. And knowing that without these services, we're not sure what would happen to these families. So I'm really proud to work on it. I'm thankful for all the support we're getting for it. And it's going to be a great summer. I can
Yeah,
tell it.
that's really exciting. And yeah, that's a large scale. I mean, that's a lot of youth.
Yeah,
Um, wow, that's incredible. Well, excited to follow up in the fall to see how things went.
yeah, for sure.
Definitely will be a summer to remember. Um, so shifting gears a little bit, and talking a little bit more specifically about neon, I'd like to kind of dive into how it fits into your daily routine or daily flow. So can you walk us through like what a typical day of using neon kind of looks like? Like, do you have any um like, do you log in and do XYZ every single time, or does it depend on maybe a certain campaign that you're working on or certain report that you take a look at instantly?
Yeah. So I've been a neon user across a couple of different organizations that I've worked at. And so I'm going on probably 10 years, I would say, as a neon user. So
Oh
I love the
boy, you
platform.
are a super, what we call a super user.
Ooh, I love that. But I do love using neon, and yeah, it's absolutely part of my daily routine. Um, Honestly, I start my day drinking coffee out of my Neon One coffee mug. Shout out Tim Sarantonio for that. So that is how I start my day. Um, but after opening Outlook and Microsoft Teams, Neon is the next thing that I'm opening on a daily basis. And what I love about it is gosh, out of the box, it's ready to use. It's a really, I think really straightforward and streamlined and efficient tool that folks can just, start using immediately. I've optimized it so my dashboard has all of the things that I want to look at right when I open the platform. So, one of the first things that I'm looking at, that I look at every day, there's a widget where you can monitor campaign progress for different campaigns. And so that's how I set up my fundraising goals for the year. Each of my different campaigns of my different buckets for all my goals, whether it's my annual fund or my major gifts campaign or my event that I'm working on or a certain appeal, potentially. I can set up campaigns and have a goal for that, and it puts together this beautiful progress chart to see how far we are towards that goal. So that's one of the first things I'm looking at because I'm hoping that the bars are full somehow when I wake up.
Yeah.
That would be great. So that's one of the first things I look at. The second thing that I'm usually looking at, there's a letter merge tool that I use to sort of see what gifts have come in that have not yet been acknowledged in some type of way. So I use the letter merge to sort of queue all of the gifts that I need to acknowledge, and whether I acknowledge them and release it over email, or whether I take it out of the email queue and print it, or just write my own handwritten note. It helps keep me organized of what needs to be acknowledged and what's outstanding for the day. And then honestly, depending on the day, I'm using the full suite of what Neon has. If I'm in grants mode, I'm using the grants function to be able to track, due dates and things like that. I firmly believe if it didn't happen in the database, it didn't happen. So I'm using the database to sort of record contact reports and any research notes that I have about organizations or individuals that I'm meeting with, setting activity reminders and things like that. So I have to say, for me, I mean, Neon is a core piece of all the activities that I'm doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And we love, I love hearing, even the small things like, yeah, I'm using the activities. It's task management and it keeps me on track. It keeps me organized.
Yeah, someone's gotta, because or else I can't keep it all straight. So
Yeah. With that, I know you mentioned taking a look and setting up kind of your campaigns in more of a visual format with the dashboard. Have you happened to spot any surprising trends in your data since using Neon?
yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple things that you play around with, or you take note of, especially after you've been using the system and been in fundraising for a number of years. Something that I've recently started doing is adding on donation forms. You can add a field for a donor note for donors to leave a little note about their gift or something like that. And I've gotten creative and left a little prompt of, what inspired you to give today, or for my Summer to Remember campaign, I wrote, do you have a childhood memory you'd like to share or something? And I
Oh,
find
I love that.
give donors that opportunity. People are filling it out. And it's not everybody. Of course, not everyone's taking the time to do that. But I've been getting notes like, I hope the kids have the best summer, or thank you for all you do, or, make sure you go to Jimmy's ice cream stand or something like that. Just giving a little space for that. And again, maybe they don't know who's seeing it on the other end. They don't know who I am maybe all the time. But I think for me, it sort of humanizes that act of people giving and being generous. And I find that so adorable, honestly, that people are
Mhm.
leaving notes.
No, I love that. Yeah, it builds a sense of greater connection. Like it takes
Yeah.
I totally see that. It's like it takes the I don't know what you would want to call it, but just like the basic like, hey, I'm filling out this donation form to like, oh, they are actually asking about me and my input and my thought.
Yeah.
So, which is
Absolutely.
great because that's another way to capture donor insights and sentiment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another thing that I noticed, sometimes I'll play around. We send all of our email communications through Neon as well. It's a really great tool to be able to segment audiences together and to, craft emails and also send them out and sort of track insights. I've been playing around with like different PSs and adding PSs at the end of my emails. And sometimes they're just like silly, but sometimes they're, hey, have you thought about spreading your gift over 12 months? Like make this a monthly gift. Or hey, have you checked out our impact report this year? Click here to see, all your stories in action of the impact that you're making. Um, and I find that when I do that, there's an interesting number of click throughs. People are clicking PSs, they're
Huh.
reading PSs, and they're clicking. Maybe they're not all becoming monthly donors, but they clicked it. They're looking at the donation form.
Yeah, there's awareness there. Or like, oh, I didn't know you had a recurring giving program or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
And I love that because it's just a PS. It's a simple, like, it's not a huge, strong ask, right? It's just like, here's a
exactly.
little PS.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the last thing that I notice in doing this, we try to as much as we can sort of segment our donors of where they're coming from and sort of some of the attributes that they have. So, for example, we're a large organization. We have over 800 employees across New York State, and so when people give, I want to know if they're Together for Youth employees and if they're choosing to support. And
Mhm.
I don't always expect that people who work at our organization will support, but we do like to track that stuff. And then additionally, people who are foster parents with us, they're already doing something incredibly generous by opening their home and being a foster parent. And when I have the information, we can tag them as that. But when I see employees making gifts and current foster parents making gifts, they're already doing hard work. They're already on the front
Mhm.
lines. And then they're also choosing to make a gift and support a campaign. Watching that data come through and seeing those gifts, it's really inspiring because these people are, it's just double the generosity, but
Mhm.
it means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, double the generosity. That is,
Yeah,
it's like how much more can you give? And you can give a lot.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
incredible.
It's great.
So we talked a little bit about you know, obviously the different surprising trends, which are super fun to get some insight on. Um, how do you specifically measure success in your greater community building efforts?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways, and I think it depends on who you are talking to. Everyone's going to have their different ways that they're sort of measuring that. I obviously for me as a director of development, of course your financial benchmarks are a way of measuring generosity on a year-to-year basis. Did we hit fundraising targets? Did we not? Did we lose donors? Did we renew donors? So those are some kind of like easy metrics that you can track every single year. But there's definitely non-financial ways to sort of measure that impact. And I think, there's some shops where they'll have the emphasis on like the number of relationships that you have and the number of donors. But I've really come to find it's not the quantity, but it is the quality of those relationships. And, you know, I sort of measure, and there's not always a great way to sort of track this stuff, but just the quality relationships that you have and some of those stewardship phone calls maybe you make with the donor, and you really have this beautiful connection of why they chose to give. And they're starting to ask questions, how else can I help? Or what else do you need? Those are valuable. And I had a phone call with a corporate partner yesterday, actually. Um, and she called me and said, I'm just making some calls and I want to know that how I can be a better corporate partner to you. What do you need? I'm inspired by the work you do. I'm just making some phone calls. I mean, I'll be honest, not every corporate partner is calling me to ask me that. And so I just felt really seen. I felt really validated sort of in the relationship that I had built with this partner that, she's calling me to check in that way. Um, so I would say quality over quantity, I think, of relationships is one.
Yeah, that's
Um,
yeah, and generosity is a two-way street, right? She's showing you generosity, you're showing her generosity. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I also think, going back to the conversation we were having about sort of our rebrand and the way that we're reframing our mission and showing up in our communities now as Together for Youth, I really believe that, marketing is mission. Marketing is not a line item that is a means to, our mission, but it is something that sort of sits across the entire organization and the way that we show up and brand ourselves and talk about our values. It obviously helps us recruit donors and people to support us. but it also is the way that clients and families are finding out about our services and reaching us and connecting with us. It's also about how human resources is recruiting staff and people are coming to try to work with us and be a part of our mission. And so, when we see people wanting to work at Together for Youth, when we see people wanting to be foster parents, when we see people deciding to make a gift and contribute, that's generosity across the board there. And so that's why I'm really proud that our organization has rebranded and really set forth this kind of reaffirming set of values for the work that we do, because it's permeating our community. People want to get on board with the work that we're doing. So really proud to be doing that type of work.
Yes, no, that's fantastic. And I mean, you're just exploring how generosity is shaping your work and the greater community at large.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that, one of the most recent campaigns that it's a non-financial campaign for us. It really is more of an awareness campaign, but I think it is a perfect showcase of the generosity. Every May is Foster Care Awareness Month. And so our colors are purple. So we do this campaign called Go Purple during May. And it's all about raising the awareness of the need for foster parents in New York State. And we just encourage people to, during the month of May, consider doing something like wearing a purple t-shirt one day. Or if you're a teacher in your classroom, like hanging purple decorations or having the kids do a purple craft. But this year we really went big. It was our first Go Purple as Together for Youth. So we really spread ourselves out across New York State. And we had participation from 50 counties across New York State, which is
Oh,
huge.
wow.
Of all different businesses and individuals and schools doing something to go purple. So we had businesses making purple cupcakes. We had Niagara Falls light up purple one night. The
Oh my
Mario
goodness.
Bridge lit up purple one night. Someone on Long Island was, doing purple hair extensions at a salon. And so it was really this culmination of community across an entire state, which is no easy feat. But again, coming together, uniting for one common cause. And again, I can't say I had anything to do with it, but it was just really neat to watch that and be a part of something, really impactful.
Yeah. You keep saying you have nothing to do with it, but you have everything to do with it.
Thanks.
You are in it. No, and I love it. I mean, I think that's the deep rooted part of generosity and community. It's like there it is. It's a perfect example of an awareness campaign, people coming together and all rooting for the same cause, the same mission, the same people. Um, that's really inspiring. Um, well, I know we've chatted here so for quite a bit, and I'm definitely inspired. I wanted to do a little. We have kind of or we're going to start a little fun round called the lightning round. Um, so we've all heard of what a lightning round is, but basically, I'm going to ask a quick question, and you have to answer quickly on your feet. They're not going to be hard, I promise. So I'll ask about, I don't know, 5 to 10-ish questions. And we'll just kind of speed round it. So we will start. So Eric, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nice, me
Black.
too. Black coffee. Straight to the veins.
Yes.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird for sure. Maybe night
Early-
owl in my college days, but that has changed.
Yeah, exactly. If you weren't working in the nonprofit world, what would you be doing?
I love this question. I think I would be in hospitality. I love entertaining people. I love making people feel warm and happy and supported. So something in the hospitality, restaurant, hotel, something like that.
I love that. That's a great answer, and you would be fantastic at that job as well.
Thank you.
What is your guilty pleasure snack?
I'm a big ice cream guy. And I love not like fruity ice cream. It's got to be chocolate, like drenched in caramel, something like that. I'm a big ice cream guy. And I love not like fruity ice cream. It's got to be chocolate, like drenched in caramel, something like that.
Good. I'm That's my answer too. I know this is your lightning round, but
Yeah,
my choice would also be ice cream. And I also agree with the like, I want the peanut butter cups and the brownies and the all the goods.
it is the season for ice cream, so
Yeah.
we're
Dream vacation spot.
I would love. As a Long Islander, I was a big beach guy growing up. So I miss my beaches, my ocean beaches. Um, so really anywhere with an ocean beach, I guess. But I will say, I would love to go to Japan. And there's definitely
Mm.
ocean beaches in Japan, but I've never been. But I love Japanese culture, philosophies, food, kind of in this like Japanese minimalism thing that I'm learning about. So I would love to go to the beach there and eat there. I think it'd be really fun.
Fantastic. That is a dream spot. Indeed. Um, Three more questions here. What's the last thing that made you laugh really hard?
Uh, well, I am a new uncle to a
Oh,
6 month
congrats.
year old nephew. And just seeing him laugh at himself and make himself laugh is very contagious. So
Hmm.
my little nephew has made me laugh. Oh,
You want to spark joy? Just hang around a 6-month-old laughing baby.
yes, yes.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Gosh, I really believe in the power of mentorship and all that type of stuff. So I've gotten so much advice over the years. I mean, it's basic, but it's I think be yourself. Just be true to who you are. Um, Obviously, in my personal life, I think that's important, but even in my professional life, I mean, donors can see the authenticity of who you are. I try to be unapologetically myself all the time, and I think and I hope that that comes through and that personality and signature Eric comes through. But I really try to use that as a guiding star.
I love that. That's fantastic. I'm like, can you write a children's book?
Sure.
Um, and then the last question here. What does generosity mean to you in one word?
One word. That's tough.
I know it is hard.
I'm going to say compassion. I think, having, yeah, no, just one word, compassion. I'm not explaining.
I mean, you can justify, but
Yeah.
yes, compassion. I like that. I was thinking about that answer too, and I was like, I don't know what I would say. And then I'm like, I think the first thing that came to my mind was community, but compassion is a really, really great word. Awesome. Well, thank you for being our first guest on Voices of Generosity. Again, this is a segment where we talk to real clients, real people like Eric, with real missions to understand real generosity in action. So, Eric, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your passion and the work you do.
Absolutely happy to be here. Thanks for chatting with me.
So we're going to do a fun thing. This is Tim Antonio popping into Sam's episode. Hi, Sam. What a fun episode
Hey,
that
Tim.
we've had.
I know. This has been a great first episode for me, second episode of the podcast.
Yeah. So we heard from Laura Block. She talked about a bunch of cool things. I also want to point out the stats report also has volunteer data being added to it, and we will talk about the stats report maybe another time, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Because we got to hear from Eric, and we actually got a little bit of follow up in email based on the mailbag. So we're going to do our first nonprofit hotline, and we had something come into our inbox. Actually, I was looking at also a Facebook group that talked about this item. I want to talk about material tracking a little bit. So the idea of the hotline is somebody has some specific kind of nerdy things, and especially if you're a Neon user, you want to perk up in particular. But even if you're not using us, I think you're going to get something out of it because we're talking about using tech practically, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about material tracking, and first can you help me define what this is? Because the question basically is, what is material tracking? And it's a very particular thing that we have that I think is an underutilized feature.
Yes. And I love that question because it's very, very simple, but it's very, very important. And material tracking really is a feature that can help pretty much any organization be able to track when physical materials, this could be um, an appeal letter that you're sending out, this could be your thank you letters that you're sending out, this could be member packets. All it is doing is it is tracking when those are created and when they are sent.
So we actually, because we saw this come in, I asked Eric, who you all just heard about that. I said, "Hey, how do you use this?" And so you didn't hear it in the episode, but I'm going to read what he wrote to us afterwards because, Carla, this is for you. This is where I got it. I saw it in an unofficial Facebook group about material tracking too. We use this for all our external materials, appeals, mailed annual reports, and event invitations. We use a mailing report to generate the mailing list. Don't forget to pull through your account ID field. He bolded that, Sam. He bolded it. Why is an account ID very important in the database?
It signifies exactly who the account is tied to. So when you are in this particular situation, when you are creating a letter merge, for example, for a specific campaign or acknowledgement, during the merge, Neon is generating a material tracking record for each recipient that's tied to that code.
So there's a few ways you could go about this. You can kind of run it directly in the system, or you might kind of process things and you want to do it outside. Like you work with a mailing house, for instance, and you have an external report that you've given them, but you then say, I didn't run the letters out of Neon, right? Like that happens a fair amount. But you want to indicate that you worked with the mailing house or you did the mailing. You can then actually add it as an external material. And that's why the account ID helps match up. So it's a very easy thing. So even when you hand the mailing house the report, include the account ID in the report, because sometimes you can even use that to kind of get some updates on opt-outs or NCOA type things. Sometimes a mailing house gives that. Sam, I would be remiss if we're talking about material tracking. Isn't there a new feature on data hygiene that we also released?
Yeah, so we have the national change of address update that we include in one of our higher level packages, and you can purchase it as a one-time service. And if you're not familiar with that, NCOA is again national change of address. So what it does is it is scanning your system. Ours is on a weekly basis. And if a donor moves, right, you don't want to be sending them information at the wrong physical address. So it's automatically updating your database. Behind the scenes, you don't have to do anything. You can make sure that all of your appeals and all of your thank you letters and everything, every physical thing that you're sending any type of constituent in your database is up to date.
There's a reason we chose this for our first hotline. Now you check the show notes. Please submit your questions. What are you wondering about? So we nerded out about direct mail today, basically.
Yeah, be a neon nerd.
Be a neon nerd. But Sam, do we hear about direct mail usually when on LinkedIn or you're seeing webinars for other CRM providers? Nobody talks about it.
It's one of those things that is like every organization does it, but it's not like super fun to talk about, but it's something that's
disagree. Sam.
Yes, I should. Yeah. As we just talked about it here, but it's not a super flashy feature or tool, but it is a needed tool.
Awesome. Well, so you get a little taste of how we're going to handle this, but we want to continue to kind of get your questions. Check the show notes. A little bit of a preview, Sam. Next month, we have Dream Big Summit on July 16th. So I'm going to be interviewing Kathy Kempf from New Clavis, who we are partnering with for that event. So maybe we can, I know we're going to talk a little bit about peer-to-peer next month too, perhaps. So
Yeah.
Any potential questions? What do you think a good question for peer-to-peer would be to answer?
Oh, that's a great question. I foresee some organizations chiming in and saying, I see other organizations hosting peer to peer campaigns, but I don't know where to start.
Mm,
Or
mm.
what's the difference between a peer to peer campaign and just a regular fundraising event?
Well, we if you submit either of those with your name on it, folks, that's okay. Sam, it's your show, so why don't you have the last word?
That's a wrap on this episode of the Generosity Experience. We hope that you are walking away with a few new ideas, some inspiration, and a deeper sense of how generosity shows up in action. We'll be back next month for more real stories and more fresh strategies.
Thanks for listening to the Generosity Experience. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you in 2 weeks.